Hey, folks, we're back and we're going to have a little conversation about DevOps in the age of AI because we've been debating this back and forth. And fortunately, we got to talk to some folks about what they're actually doing in real life. Sean Tiber is on a previous episode of the TechStrong TV channel, so go find this. But we're going to run a little segment of this interview where he talks about how Mondelez, his company, or at least the one he works for, is using AWS Q inside their software engineering workflows to make things more efficient. But it doesn't sound like maybe we're replacing DevOps engineers anytime soon, at least from his perspective. And by the way, if you don't know who Mondelez is, look in your kitchen cabinet. You'll find Oreos and Cliff Bars, and those are the guys who make those. Anyway, let's see what Sean says. Everybody's talking about what are the implications for the future of application developers. And on the one hand, some people will say it's just going to make the developers more efficient and they'll still be with us, but they'll be in a different kind of role, more of an architect and much more of the code might be written by a machine. And others are saying eventually the machine does everything. But where are you on that spectrum?
I think I'm probably leaning more towards we're always going to need people who are really good problem solvers and are able to define problems in a way that they can be solved effectively and securely and efficiently. The actual work of a software developer or a cloud engineer on my team has already begun to change, where we're relying on AI agents and assistants to do more of the work with us and for us. And I think for me, in many ways, I'm seeing my team use these tools to help automate kind of the boring, tedious work, right? Reapply the things that we've already learned. It's hard to predict, I don't think anyone can, where this is going to go in the future, but I'm leaning more towards the side of I'm always going to need engineers. I'm always going to need people who know how to solve problems, how to define them well. And regardless of the tools that they're employing and I'm providing them with, I'm going to still need those kinds of individuals in my organization. All right, we're back. And Chhaya, you too are close to this. And the question that's been going around all this time is, does AI replace DevOps engineers and software engineers, or is it just going to change the way we think about building software? And if so, how?
That's a good question. And I do feel that the changes are coming. There are two aspects of agentic AI, not just AI, about the agentic AI. And in DevOps, it's going to help, and it is helping a lot immensely with troubleshooting, network debugging, security aspects of it, federated learning. But there's also other side of it, which we still have a lot of work to do, where we want these agents to handle the infrastructure dynamically. And that's where I think the experienced specialized DevOps engineers are still needed in terms of what automation we actually need so that we don't blow up the infrastructure, right? You can have an agentic AI go and spin up hundreds of instances when, as a customer, you may not even need it. So there is a need of supervised learning. There is a need of structuring the process, but it is definitely, even I am an extensive user of it, it is helping a lot in terms of debugging, in terms of collecting the information from different sources. For example, I'm a heavy MCP user, so what I did is I built various MCP servers and connected with Q. And it is giving me a summarized information, which is helping me a lot to kind of debug in terms of any event that I want to take a look at it.
Right. So if we think that through for a minute, now we've talked to DevOps engineers for years, and every one of them always says the same thing: is basically I'm overwhelmed and I can't keep up. So at the end of the day, does AI kind of just make this a job that you can actually accomplish because there's going to be more software than ever? But it seems like all the AI advances lately are for the developers and not much for the DevOps engineers.
That's not true completely. If, as a DevOps engineer, you're very well aware of the capabilities of AI, it helps. It helps a lot in terms of summarization part, especially. So you can place automations in place to collect your logs, to have your network monitored, especially in the observability aspect. It is helping. It will help a lot. If, having said that, it does require a little bit of ramping curve in terms of the knowledge base, especially DevOps deals with.
Absolutely. Look, here's the thing, right? And I'll mention, not last week, the week before, I was at Platform Con in New York, and there's a lot of where they started off a little adversarial. There's a lot of overlap and cooperation now between the platform engineer and DevOps engineer and so forth. When it comes to AI, it's agentic AI that's going to help the DevOps engineer and the platform engineer. It's having these autonomous agents that are doing some of the work, but they're not at least not in the foreseeable future, which in our world is 18 months, right? In the next 18 months, let's say 2 years, they're not replacing the DevOps engineer any more than they're replacing the platform engineer or the SRE or these people. They are helping. They are the co-pilot to the pilot, right? They're enhancing the DevOps engineer. And Mike, to your point, maybe it allows these folks who are always kind of playing catch up, right? Too much work to do, too little time to get it done, to get out ahead of this and actually increase our deployments, speed up our deployments, better secure our deployments, right? And that might be the single biggest thing is, can we use agentic AI to help with compliance and not just compliance for compliance sake, but for security, right? This is, I mean, a great, again, I got into DevOps from security because I thought DevOps was a great opportunity for security. Agentic AI for DevOps, in my mind, another great opportunity for security, where we can build this in here. These agents can do things that maybe a DevOps engineer is not a security person. It can enhance their security capabilities. And Ira, I know you would like to see better security.
I would like to see better security, and this is a catch-22 because so far, when you look at agentic AI, agentic and writing code and everything else, security has not been well embedded in anything. Like, I'm dating myself, but the first version of the Mozilla browser had no security in it whatsoever. It took version 1.2 because nobody even thought about putting a password on the system. And so all of a sudden it took a few revisions to get there. Now, when we're talking about agentic AI, I promise you, again, let's make something functional first, and maybe we'll think about it later. And even when you think about it, I mean, let's just consider the number of vulnerabilities that are being announced on a daily, weekly, monthly basis already of regular software where people are already well aware of security issues. Now, it's like, what's the word? To err as human, to really screw things up takes a computer. And this is what's going to happen, especially with security vulnerabilities. You're going to have people doing essentially an agentic AI. They are going to try to secure the code that's written. And maybe they're going to go ahead and they're going to also be able to do security reviews as well. That's another function perhaps built into DevOps. But I still think that there is going to be a nightmare resulting from security built in. And much like we talked about on the previous segment, I do think people are going to start embedding malware into this. And so proactively, like into APIs that are pulled, that's going to be a future segment as well. And so anyway, I'll stop my monologue, but I just think we need to do this because productivity is not going to stop. But at the same time, we really, really better have a fail-safe mechanism as best we can built in.
Lisa is messaging. Let me pull Lisa into this chat since we haven't quite gotten there yet. But we talked a little bit about this in the past, but there is so much noise being handed over to investors and Wall Street talking about how, we're going to reduce the size of companies and lay this one over and that. And yet I've also started to see a message now where people are rehiring folks that they thought that they were going to lay off, and it turns out that they maybe have different jobs and roles, but maybe the sum total here is I have the same number of people that I always had. It's just that they're more efficient, but it's not necessarily going to be fewer people. And do we need to change our tenor and tone?
I think the tone needs to be transparent. It's like we talked about in the prior segment, and Alan was talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly, and Ira, you commented on the ugly, and that's just a fact where companies need to have the messaging really straight, but it has to be transparent. I think that they have to understand how agentic AI is augmenting the DevOps engineers, the developers, how it's augmenting other functions and roles in organizations. But then we have conflicting messaging like Andy Jassy about 10 days ago that talked about AI replacing jobs at Amazon. So I think we're seeing kind of a mixed bag here. And what we need to have is that transparency, but it has to be consistent, where we really identify what are the benefits of Gen AI, agentic AI, where are the challenges and the concerns that everyone needs to be aware of, and the security front needs to be front and center, and a constant reminder to organizations that this is something that needs to be continuous in the foreground, really. But I think the messages are conflicting between different companies. I'm hearing a lot of things here in Silicon Valley that a lot of folks are saying, well, if AI is going to replace my job, how can I get AI skills? And we're seeing companies rehire, as you mentioned. And the message there is that folks that have AI skills or know how to use AI to some degree are more desirable. But I think we're just going to see an inconsistency of messaging as different companies are treating it differently. And I think that's just what we're seeing and what we're going to see for the foreseeable future.
That probably I'm sorry, go ahead, John.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, sorry, Alan. To Lisa's point, Microsoft just announced 9,000 layoffs. And Cisco's been letting people off, which they have not announced, but it's dribbling out because I have several friends who just lost their jobs. So we're starting to see it. Among the largest companies, the ones you think would be the best positioned. And again, what these companies do through technology waves is not just with AI. They move to the cloud, they move to mobile, whatever. When they do, they shed a certain number of workers and hire new ones. So there may be a net of zero in the end, but they're constantly shifting the employment. It's not great for the workers, but this is what the companies have to do if they're going to maintain their edge and their competitive stance. So we're going to see a lot more of it. I wouldn't be surprised if, as you mentioned, Amazon, there'll be layoffs there. It will just go across the gamut.
In a year, half the people who got laid off by Microsoft are going to be working for Cisco, and the other half of Cisco will be working for Microsoft.
It's happened before, right?
Yeah.
This has happened another way.
There's a new cologne out, Perfume de AI. You just spray yourself with that, and you become very desirable.
Wow.
Sorry. I hate to do this and put a damper because in many ways what you're saying is true, but I have a lot of friends who have been out of a job for an extended period of time. So we really, I don't want to downplay it because, it's between the tariffs taking a hit on retailers as an example, where I obviously have a lot of friends who have been laid off due to that. To all, different shifts. I think we've been doing, this is definitely a different topic for some other time.
But it's a topic we've discussed.
Yeah.
They're laying people off under the guise of AI when what they're really doing is laying people off because they hired like drunken sailors during COVID.
Yeah, during COVID, they overhired. Yes.
Now it's very hard. Like you, Ira, I get friends every day writing me to help them with jobs. And these people are out of work 8, 9 months and more. And they're highly skilled, very, great people to put in an organization. It's just hard.
And I wish I could create a company of just laid off people. Because the fact of the matter is, at this point, if you hire somebody who's been laid off, they are going to be as loyal as hell if you treat them decently. They're going to work their asses off. I hope I could say that on here. But they are going to, I just want to keep it real because it's easy to say, like, there's this whole Silicon Valley. It's like fairy tale land out there with like people jumping around from one of the, FANG companies to another or something similar with outrageous salaries and things like that compared to the rest of the profession that's out there. And there's a lot of people who are not going to be as, let's just say, mobile as some of these other Silicon Valley companies that are like hiring and firing people on whims. So anyway, I just want to just have to keep it real for there because I just have a few people in my inbox today that. Anyway, sorry about the damper.
No, you're absolutely right. It's like Logan's Run here. I mean, I'll be honest. It's a lot of ageism, and the cycle is becoming to the point where it used to be considered old if you were in your 40s at one of these companies. Now, if you're in your 30s, you're considered on the cusp. So
Can
that's
I add
just
something here? So what I wanted to add is yes, people are losing jobs, but there are also an opportunity here. There are a lot of jobs coming up in prompt engineering. The reason I say that because I'm an immigrant for over 13 years now. I'm on a visa here. So losing a job being an immigrant is the worst fear that anybody would have. But that's the best side about me because I have this sword hanging on my neck. I'm constantly evaluating, am I on the edge of things? Am I learning new things? Am I exploring it? And the side of it also has it, the industry is changing. When I started my career, there were a lot of jobs for manual testing, and now those are gone. There's automation, there's DevOps. So now I feel the dev is getting automated. There is also an opportunity here in terms of skill set that people can have. And whenever I talk to people, there are still a lot of people who are not aware of many of the things in what they can use to improve their skill set. So I think the responsibility is also on the workforce to keep up with the skill set that are coming up. And the AI is not that we are talking about it today. I think ChatGPT came up in 2020, I believe November. So it's been like 4 years now. We need to kind of train ourselves to untrain the things the way we've been doing over the years.
Yeah,
Chhaya,
that's a great
Well,
point.
you know what?
Everybody
Kudos to you.
is trying to figure out what Logan's Run is, John.
Well, they
Yeah, I
learned
was
that
doing
when
that
they
too.
graduated
That's a
in
damn
once
good
you suck, you're
2007.
done. Yeah.
But no,
Yeah.
kidding aside, Chhaya, congratulations and kudos to you, right? Because you just hit a really important piece, right? We see the headlines about immigrants. We see the headlines, people on visas. We see the headlines about layoffs and about AI taking jobs. And, part of the American dream, and we just passed July 4th, right? Go West, young man. Anything is possible in America. That's what brought immigrants here, is that anything is possible in America. But no one gets handed a free lunch, or at least they're not supposed to be. You work for it and you get it. You make yourself better and you become more valuable. You can't sit there and think it's coming to me. And I don't care, that frankly is whether you're an immigrant or you were born here and your people came over in the Mayflower. If you're sitting here thinking you're entitled to something, that's not America. That's not the US. You have got to be constantly honing your skills, sharpening yourself, making yourself more marketable, more valuable. And I think that's the message to take out of this.
I agree. I think it's a shared responsibility model. And Chhaya, I'm glad that you brought that up because I talked about the Andy Jassy statement from a couple of weeks ago that we actually dissected on this program, that AI, and it's just feeding the fear that the general population has of AI. It's going to take over everything. I've got family in the entertainment industry who are terrified of it taking over jobs for them. But you bring up a great point, Chhaya, in that it's shared responsibility, that you had this impetus within you, and more people need to be aware that they need to take responsibility in educating themselves and upskilling themselves and learning how to use AI tools to make their jobs better, more productive, ultimately making their products and services better for those folks that are consuming them. But they've got to have stake in the game. That's a mindset and a message that needs to be out there.
So I have to play devil's advocate here. Not to say that people shouldn't be motivated and keep on the cusp and everything like that. But you mentioned prompt engineers as an example. Yeah, if you're in Silicon Valley and prompt engineering jobs are out there, I look at the jobs around me and, not in the FANG type of group. And prompt engineering isn't really that popular. And then, or isn't that available? I also look to people who have been in the profession, like for 20, 30 years. God bless you for 2007. But, I know people who started around 2000 earlier, and even at your level, I mean, I don't think a prompt engineer, unless you get some mythical job at OpenAI, is going to pay the same as somebody who's been in the workforce for 25 years, who has been doing a good, decent job evolving for the needs of an organization. And then all of a sudden, the organization just says, hey, we don't need you because, well, you're doing an important job, but we could not need that important job because we have to have cuts. And then saying, for example, that you're going to replace somebody at 225 a year with a prompt engineering job, which could be handled, frankly, by somebody offshore, is not a realistic thing to say, like to become, hey, I want to be trained in a salary for a job that pays half the salary I'm currently making. That's the problem people are having. I
But
mean, there
Ira,
is
let
some.
me turn it around, and we're overtime on this, but let me quickly turn it around on you. You know what? I think auto factory workers said the same thing in the 70s and 80s, right? Those factory jobs were going away, and all of a sudden they could go work at Walmart as a greeter or something, right? It's about retraining people, whether it's prompt engineering or some other skill set. If your niche is being amalgamated, for lack of a better word, you've got to do something about your skill set to make yourself marketable. Whether
No,
it's,
I
don't know if it's prompt engineering.
No, I 100% agree. There's just like, for example, factory workers, factory closed down, they have to move. Luckily we're in the knowledge industry, so perhaps there's a few more remote jobs that are available to us, and I know people are taking advantage of that. But yeah, I mean, I just want to say it's not as simple as just saying, hey, you haven't been staying up to date on what are now low paying jobs. And therefore, it's like,
But
I just don't
that's an
like.
American. So is that people's problem? Is that an American problem where, an economy problem where, look, we're eliminating high paying jobs for people to take low paying jobs? Yeesh.
Well, I think that's a personal responsibility. I mean, frankly, at the end of the day, you could say it's the economy, it's everything else. As I forgot who he sets the analogy, but there's always a wind. How you set your sail is how successful where you're going to go.
And that's what I think I'm
And
saying, whether it's prompt engineering or whatever else the next thing is.
right, but I'm just saying we're changing. The problem is the mindset that people have got complacent, because complacency, I hate to say, has been a beneficial thing for companies and the people themselves. I work for the government. I work for NSA, where people are like, I had a friend who hated his job. And then I'm like, why don't you leave and get paid 50% more? He's like, Ira, I only have 15 more years until full retirement. And I was like,
he's got
I
his
gotta
countdown
get the
clock
hell
on.
out of there. And
Yeah,
now
no,
he
but
doesn't
you're right.
Yeah.
I've seen that at the government. Anyway, hey guys, we've got
last comment on this. It is going to be America's problem, and we see it because there's a socialist who's going to wind up running New York City. This is an example thereof.
Yeah. All right. We got to. I hate to leave on that, but we're going to take a break. We're going to come back. Let's change the subject. Trust in AI search not. LLMs. This sounds like an Ira thing. LLMs exploited by phishing. You're watching Tech Strong Gang.